Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in to talk about My Hero Academia, Season 5, Episode 6, the conclusion to Momo and her team versus Kendo and her team. Man, let me tell you guys, if there was ever one chapter from this arc that really got me in a little bit of a critical mode, it was definitely this one. Because this one, it was just so interesting with the way it went. So for the episode review, I will be largely talking about the episode, but this time, when you're reviewing a chapter, you don't have the luxury of knowing what comes in the future to validate your opinions. But now that we have the episode and the chapter so far ahead, the things that that I said before, and I think the things I'm gonna say here have even more merit, because ultimately, what you end up seeing in the episode is very designed. When you look at the way the episode is constructed, with the way that everyone is talking about Momo, the episode is designed to make it look like even though Momo loses, she's still worthwhile. And it, to some degree, it works and it doesn't work. Like, you understand why it's happening, because it's, at the end of the day, it's a training exercise. It makes sense that people are going to look at the positives. But some of the rhetoric here, I think the anime delivers it a little bit better than the manga did. But ultimately, it's still an interesting little situation that occurs in the episode with the way that things are being interpreted. So just a quick recap, the episode just follows the fight between Momo and Kendo. What you ultimately see is a lot of Quirk exposition. You have Shemage being revealed and her Quirk being revealed. You have Manga's Quirk being revealed. You have just the situation that occurs with Momo getting separated, dealing with Kendo, and then Momo sending over her care package to Tokoyami to allow Tokoyami to hopefully get the victory on this one. When I first talked about the chapter, the thing I criticized a lot was Kendo feeling like she hadn't beaten Momo. In this case, Kendo doesn't feel like she won because Momo looked ahead. And, you understand what that means in context. In context, it's just saying, like, okay, Momo was always able to look ahead, like, but it doesn't feel like I beat her. Because she was always able to look at, like, even saying it, I can't justify that line of thinking. But from the perspective of a manga, the reason it's happening is because the author has to make sure that the readers know that Momo has value, that she is still worthwhile. That's why everyone in the episode and their mother is saying Momo looked ahead. But the reality is that this mindset can only exist in a friendly competition. The mindset can only exist when these people are still kids. Because the reality is, if you were to look at this, and this is what makes Kendo's comment about I don't feel like I really beat her less worthwhile. When you look at the end results, which of Kendo's team was taken down, right? Not that much. The reality is that when you look at the final situation, what good came out of Momo looking ahead? And what separates that from Kendo's looking ahead? Because Kendo looked ahead quite a lot too. She knew what was going to happen after they countered Kurohiro. What is the difference between these two looking ahead? Kendo, ultimately, when you look at her, it looks like she is upset that Momo was still able to think while she was under duress. But that in of itself is silly. And Momo, in that sense, shows a pro-hero aspect. I think the best way to go about this is just flat out, at the end of the battle, if you're looking at the results, if this was Momo's team versus villains, do you think the villains are going to think that they didn't really win? Everything Momo did was countered. And this is the ultimate thing. What good is looking ahead if you can't execute on it? And especially with the future of Hero Academia on the horizon, this kind of thinking, it wouldn't really apply. At the end of the day, you'd realize what it actually means to win. This whole thing about I didn't feel like I really won, it's only possible because they're in a friendly environment. In the real world, Momo's looking ahead would still get people killed because Momo wouldn't be able to properly, account for all the things here. And there's a few things that are going on because in this episode, you have also Shoto playing hype man for Momo. And it's funny because even when Shoto's having his flashback, He's flashing back to, he starts the flashback on Momo having her self-esteem issues, and the episode ends with Shoto worried about Momo's self-esteem. Like, really think about what that says at the end of the day. So, you know, as we go into the conversation, first thing I will say is Kendo doesn't feel like she beat Momo because she wasn't able to stop Momo from thinking ahead. But at the end of the day, she was able to counter everything that Momo said. Whereas when it comes to the people who are praising Momo, one of them definitely overshot his praise. And I have all like the critical lines here. But at the end of the day, like, you understand what it was going on, right? It's just saying Momo has value. Momo is going to be good for the future because she's showing good traits right now. I think a lot of it is propaganda, but in the context of a friendly little thing, it's all right. Like, Kendo can feel like she didn't beat Momo because she wasn't able to stop the woman that could make a microchip with a head wound from thinking. Unfortunately, Kendo thinks that she should be able to do that. I don't think she should be able to do that. If Kendo can come up with plans, Momo can most certainly come up with plans in the microsecond. It's part of Momo's quirk ability. Well, not part of it, but Momo has an incredible processing mind. You're never going to be able to stop Momo from thinking unless you knock her unconscious, which is what Kendo did, much to her thing here. But there's just so much to dissect. Let's go into first the quirks. I think the quirks were amazing. Ultimately, Momo, even... Actually, no, let's not talk about the quirks. We'll talk about Momo and Shoto in particular. So, the way that the chapter is set up is that Shoto is her hype man the whole way through. And that's good because it's really cute. It's 100% cute. But the reality is, Shoto has no idea what he is talking about. And like the reveal of like the time that he has the best idea what he's talking about is when he's worried that Momo's self-esteem is going to be going down the gutter. And in this case, it's pretty clear, right? Shoto says that first, they should have taken out Momo if they were actually worried about her. But then you see the results. Should they have taken out Momo if they were worried about her? Not really, because at the end of the day, Kendo still wins. So Shoto is wrong. This is the thing that makes the episode tough, is that you have to look at what the characters are saying, and then you have to be able to say, well, no, you're wrong, with their assumptions. And there's nothing wrong with being able to say that. So Shoto doesn't know what he's talking about when he's talking about Momo's operation. He says, and we can see that because he says, if it's within expectations, she should be able to win. And I believe the exact wording was, Shoto says that she constructs a path to victory. That's what Momo is best at. And it's like, okay, you can construct a path to victory, but does that really matter if the victory is entirely theoretical? Because when you look at it, he's saying that as long as it's within expectations, Momo's going to be able to win. The problem is that we see multiple instances where we can see that the situation was not within expectations. One of the really good moments was right at the beginning. Shoto is berating them for only sending Kendo in to deal with Momo. But when you look at that scene, when you look at the way that Momo enters that scene, Momo's like, what's the real purpose behind these attacks? So Shoto is saying everything's within expectations, but you have Momo questioning why Manga's attack came the way it did. Does that really look like that's within expectations? No, and this is why Shoto is wrong. It's because he made the false assumption that everything was planned. Moving further, to just justify that Momo in fact did not have everything within expectations. If she had everything within expectations, would she not have expected someone's quirk to be able to produce mushrooms inside of someone's throat? Flat out. You cannot say that this is within expectations if Momo doesn't send Tokoyami a gas mask. At the end of the day, no, this was not within expectations. The people in the episode can tell me all they want that Momo had the best future sight here. But Kendo, if we're grading the future sights, Kendo's future sight is significantly more sophisticated than Momo's, because Kendo properly adjusted for everyone's capabilities, whereas Momo most certainly did not adjust for everyone's capabilities. Again, the big one that is like the big critical underestimation here was underestimating Shemage. And mind you, like, I think we all underestimated Shemage. She's amazing. Her quirk's amazing. But that's the big thing. This entire thing is premised on the idea that Momo knows what she's doing, when it's very clear that she didn't. And the two spots that we could see and actually grade Momo on whether or not she knew what she was doing is not knowing Shemage's ability here, and also when she underestimated what Kendo would be able to do. The other critical thing here is that Momo knows she can't win, which is good for her. It's absolutely good that she knew she couldn't win. That's why she had to go for the team victory. And in that sense, the episode actually does... It's actually funny. Momo does more for herself than Shoto does as a hype man. Which just goes to show, again, like just how out of touch Shoto was in the situation, other than when he was worried for her self-esteem. You have Momo trying to slow down Kendo because she knows she can't win. She's taking one for the team. Admirable. But even still, Kendo still is able to go and counter the other problem, that being Invisible Girl. Think about that. Momo is able to think ahead. He wasn't able to think ahead on the fact that Tokoyami would be countered, and on the fact that what she did to stop Kendo wasn't enough. Kendo was still able to overcome everything. And this is ultimately what it comes down to. What value is a theoretical plan if you can't execute on it? In the field, when villains are actually involved, your theory is going to go out the window because you're going to see the actual consequences of not being able to execute. And it's always going to be unknown factors. And unfortunately for Momo, because of the manga that she's in, the manga's never going to let her actually account for unknown factors. And it's actually really funny. In this one, you have Tokoyami wondering like, oh Momo, did you already think of this? Back when she had said, guys, let's be careful. Let's regroup here. And it's like, well, Tokoyami, clearly you can see that she didn't think it all the way through. She didn't know everything. It's half-baked, right? When you get into an actual serious situation, Momo won't be able to see unforeseen developments and like little variables because the manga needs to maintain surprise. It needs to maintain that excitement factor. And because of that excitement factor, Momo's going to get half victories. Like the one in this episode where Kendo's saying like, oh, I don't feel like I actually won. Kendo, you put all four of them in the cage. You were able to counter Momo's counters. You were able to keep Momo on her feet the majority of the time. Like in this situation, it wasn't Kendo in reaction. Kendo was causing the situation and Momo was consistently reacting. And that's the big thing here. You can say however much that this is a half victory for Momo, and this is going to be Momo unfortunately for the rest of the future. She's going to be a character of half victories. She's going to be a character who comes up with a plan but then sees that the plan doesn't really work out. The reality ensues, and then at the end you get a little note. You get that final little bit that, oh wait, her plan actually did do something of value, but it's much too late and it's only there to serve at a different situation. But that's the spirit of Momo. Like for her in particular, it's just a bad situation because of the way that the manga works. It has to maintain an element of surprise, and to maintain an element of surprise, it means Momo can't see every possible scenario, because otherwise it's going to ruin the manga suspense or something like that. And then the other thing here is that also Class 1B needed to get a win. And this is again another thing about the element of tension. Class 1B needs to get a win because the tension needs to get driven up. If you actually have Class 1A winning the entirety of the time, well, that's going to make for a boring time. And so that's, if there's one thing that's clear about Momo's character, is that she's a victim of being in a manga, and in this case, being a character who is relevant in the middle of an arc as opposed to the end. When you're relevant at the middle of an arc, victory isn't going to come easy to you. Victory is going to come very delayed, which is going to make your efforts at the middle of the arc not look very well. And for the manga readers, you know what I'm referring to. You know what I'm referring to when I'm talking about Momo's abilities here. I think you'll agree with the statement that the series that she's in is ultimately really what hurts her the most. And then just to very quickly touch on the on Shemage. Shemage is wonderful. I think she's great. I think that Horikoshi figured out what he wanted to do with her in this arc, because he loves drawing the character. She's gotten so many shots in like the little sketches and all that. Like, she is such a wonderful character. Her quirk is so powerful. Manga's quirk also very powerful. Incredible that Aoyama's naval laser can't break into it, man. I think both of these characters were cool to see, and at the end of the day, Momo couldn't account for them, so that was really cool. So what you take away from the episode definitely is that there's a lot of propaganda going on. You have Shoto being Momo's hype man. He's making statements based on the assumption that Momo actually knows what's going on. Tokoyami is also like praising her, like, oh my god, did you think ahead this far? At the end of the day, when I'm looking at Momo here, it ultimately comes down, what is the point of theory if your theory is proven to be incompatible with the reality of the physical world? And again, the big one is, if you're so good at thinking ahead, why didn't you make a heavier cannon to actually prevent Kendo from being able to lug it around? Why didn't you properly extrapolate Kendo's physical ability when she's a physical fighter? Again, you can have the characters saying that she's thinking ahead. What value is thinking ahead if you're looking in the wrong direction? For this episode, if we were to give it a final rating, I don't think it's technically the best because of all the propaganda going on that is very easily proven wrong. If you look, the episode relies on the viewer not going back to look at previous events. But if you go back and you look at previous events, you very quickly see how wrong everyone is, and you realize how much propaganda is going on. In terms of the action was really good. In terms of Class 1B's Quirk demonstration, really good. I'm giving this one a 7 out of 10, and of course I don't take into account visuals or anything like that. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10 for just how wrong the message that they're trying to show us is, and just like also keeping in mind that this only really happens because we're in a friendly environment. If this was in a real environment, a lot of this stuff just doesn't go anywhere because the 4 people that get caught get killed if they're facing villains. And interestingly enough, like actually when you think about the future of Hero Academia, right, for the guys that know the manga, you understand what happens when you fail in an actual situation that matters. Anyway, everyone, thank you so much for watching. This was a critical one, but it's because this is one of the most contentious. It's because this was one of the most contentious chapters in that whole arc. Like if I was to tell you what were the weakest parts of the arc, or of the Class 1A 1B fight, the chapters that this episode adapted would have been the bunch. And you know, at the time, people criticized my opinion on it, but the future has a way of vindicating my opinions on this one. And as time has gone on, more people have come to criticize Momo, I think unfairly, because at the end of the day, like I said earlier, it's not Momo's fault that she is put in this bad situation. It's the fault of the way that tension is maintained within the chapter. Momo is a character that is guided more by the chapter as opposed by her own capabilities, which is really unfortunate. Or by the needs of the story instead of her own capabilities, which is really unfortunate. Anyway, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Is there anything else that was worthwhile in the episode? No, because a lot of it's just revolving around Momo's capabilities. Anyway, everyone, thanks for watching. Till next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.